Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Anthony Wheeler.
And today we are interviewing Robb Mommaerts. And did I pronounce that right? We didn't really
I think you got pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy, I'll tell you something. Anthony actually gave me a script to read about this guy. So I'm going to
I just put it together to make life easy. I'm going to give you a script.
No, but the script is perfect. So I'm just going to get into that because I'm going to flounder all over the place because I love his work and I don't even know where to start. But he is a fan favorite cartoonist, character designer, and book illustrator who has worked with huge names like Scholastic, Penguin Workshop. My gosh. Image Comics, Epic, Cryptozoic Entertainment, and HarperCollins. He recently finished up illustrating a 6-volume chapter book series called Claude. It's about the world's most evil cat. It's like an evil genius cat.
Yeah, like an alien cat.
Yeah, evil alien warlord cat. That's how it's described. And his latest book takes us into spooky territory and breakfast foods called The Monstrous Adventures of Mummy Man and Waffles. So we get into a little bit of that book, but we really dig into in this interview just overall like creativity and how he approaches it and how he found his style and the long road that he took from being a guy who loves to draw, at home and being the art guy at school to being a professional illustrator and kind of what happened in between. So there's lots of cool stuff. Do you have any like big takeaways from this that really resonated with you?
I think what's fun for me is, and I credit you and I credit Robb as being two of the biggest inspirations for me for illustration, going back 15 some years. And so it's fun to become sort of, or go full circle and be able to have him on the show and talk. I think for me, some of the takeaways is like beyond just like how good he is and how strong of an understanding he has of shape and dynamics and volume and line. It's just how much he marries his graphic design training with his illustration stuff. He went to school for graphic design, minored in illustration, but is able to use and worked in graphic design for 15 plus years. And he's able to use all of those skills today with all of his illustration stuff. And he is just incredible, I think, because of that training and that skill. And I think that's something that people underestimate is then having those lateral skill sets that they can sort of layer in just to make their work that much better. We also, I think another big takeaway for me is that sometimes right place, right time really comes to fruition. And so we talk a little bit about how just posting on Instagram on a regular basis and just putting yourself out there, not searching for followers or likes or comments, but just being you can lead to a couple of crazy opportunities. And he really gets into that on this one. It's really neat.
Yep. I am just astonished at how prolific he is, but talking to him after this interview I realized like, it's not that he's cranking out 100 drawings every day. It's just that he does a drawing a day and he has done it for years and years and years and years. And you can't help but get better and you can't help but build a following and get noticed, not notified, but noticed for your work if you're showing up every day. So he's a real testament to that.
It's that diligence. Yep.
Let's get into it.
We were talking about eliminating sweets. And then Jake cheated the other day and added a treat into his diet, but it was jalapeno Cheetos.
Oh yeah, those are my favorite.
Oh,
I don't like the spicy. What are the other ones?
The hot.
Yes, I'm not a huge fan of those. No. They have a weird sweet taste, but I like the jalapeno ones.
There's something about them. I will say though, so my little thing that I do is I pour the Cheetos into a bowl, like a cereal bowl, and then I eat them with chopsticks so my fingers don't get all dirty.
Oh yeah,
that's a good
and
play.
It elevates the experience a little bit. Like,
well, it slows you down also. You're not...
It elevates the experience. You can get them in any gas station in America. It elevates the experience, this man says.
Just always keep a pair of chopsticks with you. Anyway, I felt like garbage the next day.
Well, of course.
I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
I'm a pretty clean eater, but every once in a while I'll do something damaging to my body, like jalapeno Cheetos, and I always feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other day I had took some photos with some friends. I had a book signing for that newest book that I'm working on, and
Yeah.
I looked like really disgusting on all the photos, and I'm like, I gotta do something. I gotta start cutting back on something, and I just looked all puffy, and I just got, like Anthony said, I've been sick the past couple days, and I noticed my weight's going down a little bit. So I'm like, yes, I can keep this going for a while.
You're just like going into
fever
like
dreams.
Yeah, you just keep going into like retail shops or like bus stations just to get more germs and sickness around you.
Handrails,
just so you can just licking handrails just so you can continue.
Yeah.
Did you get sick from your kids? Because both your kids are in high school now, aren't they?
Yeah. They're both finally in the same school. Our district, it's chopped up quite a bit for the schools, and my son is a freshman and my daughter's a junior. So
how does that feel? Are you feeling old now? Like
yes.
Jake has kids out of the house and married.
Oh yeah,
you
have a couple in college, don't you?
Yeah, I got 2 kids in college. I got a kid in Canada on a mission, so he's like,
oh wow,
he's doing his thing, and then I got 2 kids in high school, so five kids.
Okay.
And I tell you, those people that have 2 kids, I'm like, it's so quiet. It's so.
I know.
Well, yeah, and Anthony, you have 3, right? Yeah,
I have 3.
Yeah.
But I have 3 in 3 different schools right now, which is
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How old is your youngest?
7.
7.
Yeah,
okay.
he turns 8 here in a little bit, and he's in 2nd grade, and then Tessa's 12.
Holden is in middle school, right?
High school. He's 15.
High school. Oh, he's next. Yeah, my son's.
But dude, it's wild. Like Holden 6 months ago, he was kind of the runt of the litter, and some of that might be because he has epilepsy and he takes a medication that has always like made him not want to eat. It's just really goofed his appetite. That kid hit a growth spurt, and you can hear the puberty in his voice. Like it's just cracks and whistles and Greg Brady at all times. And that kid now is eating. We went to Chipotle the other day. He got a full burrito bowl, like full thing, and that's the first time he's had one of those in maybe like 10 years.
Yeah.
He ate that entire thing, put hot sauce all over it. He went back for a second one and housed almost the entirety of the next one. Wow. And I was like, hey, bud, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford to do this. And he's my hot Cheeto kid. And so all he does, like, he will crack open 2 bags, like just bash them together and just dump them down his face.
My son is the same way. He hit a growth spurt, and every day he gets a little bit taller. And he's almost as tall as me now. I'm not very tall, but it's scary. I'm afraid he's going to start, like, what are you going to do about it, Dad?
Whatever. You can squat. I know you threw out, was it your shoulder a couple of years ago that you threw out? But like you get the heavy squats in. You can still take him.
No, he's I don't know, he's starting to fill out more too, so I don't know. We'll see.
It's like those Midwestern genes. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I'm really excited. This is I asked a couple of months ago if Jake would be down, and Jake instantly said, yes, let's hook it up.
Awesome.
So
this is awesome because I've been following your work for at least a decade, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like when I was first on Instagram how long have you been on Instagram, Rob?
Maybe 8 years now, I think.
Okay. So I'm not sure exactly how I found your work, but I know it was on Instagram, and I think you might have been doing Inktober early on.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where it was. And I was like, whoa, stop. Hold on just a second. This guy's really good. And gave you a follow, and just have always really loved your cartoony style, your obviously your line work. I feel like we're speaking the same language when we draw, like the same visual language, and so just absolutely love it. And you're stinking prolific. Like every time I come to your account, there's 10 new drawings. So
Well, that's been a kind of a problem lately. I in the past I was more so, and I don't know. It's just lately I haven't been struggling with the inspiration part, just being busy, but with other things. But yeah, that's the thing I've always admired about you guys is how much stuff that you guys churn out all the time. It's amazing. And Jake, I started that before I started putting my work online, when you were part of the Blue Sky blog, that was like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years ago.
okay.
That was a huge inspiration for me. And me and my friends shortly after that, we started a blog that didn't last too long, but with kind of followed the same principle where we picked a theme.
Yeah, that was like a nice time, like a nice internet time.
Yep.
Where it was pre-social media. I mean, there was Facebook and there was Twitter, but it was early days. And everybody was just cruising around blogs, and you would cruise every morning you check your RSS feed. And you just go in there and see who posted some new stuff. And so there was these cool, like the trend that started happening. What we were doing was these group blogs where you get 5 artists together, and once a week you'd have a theme, and all 5 of the artists would like do their version of it. That's not a bad idea for an Instagram account, actually.
No.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Did we just figure out social media in 2024?
I mean,
Instagram's kind of getting sketchy right now. It's not the same anymore.
No, it's not the same.
You have 72,000 followers on it, and I'm looking at your posts. Let's see, an art post is getting 1,600 to 3,000 likes, and hey, check out my book post is getting 100 to 300 likes. That's so depressing.
It is.
That's my account right now. It's so rough. It is so rough.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I noticed my followers dropped as well recently, just by a little bit, but it was kind of, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, that's always demoralizing, right? Like you feel like you do everything right. Yeah, and I don't worry as much about it anymore as I used to, but it's like you make a good thing, you write a witty post, you get it posted at the right time for everywhere in the world. Or like in my case, I spend 45 minutes like really editing a tight video, and then they don't go to anybody. Like it just doesn't get served to anybody. And I pump my old man fist up at the sky, and and then you get the emails from Instagram like, hey, we can boost that post for you. I'm like, all right, come on.
I will say, for the first time in years, I actually had a net positive in the last month of followers, where every year it's been going down. But last month, I actually gained followers.
Oh, okay.
And the thing that I did different last month that I'd been doing other months was I went from posting once a week or once every other week to daily posting. And sort of that just aggregate of posts piling up and people coming and saying, oh, he's doing, and there was like sort of a nice cadence to the post, but also like visual symmetry to the post, like harmony, I guess, to the post, where there was all, my image on a white background looked really good on Instagram. And the way I was able to post every day, and this is something that I think both of y'all could benefit from, and that is repost old art.
Oh
yeah. I do that quite a bit.
You don't have to be making new art. You just need to repost. If it's a good thing you posted a year ago, repost it again. Maybe you post it a little bit different. You post maybe the pencils for it along with it or something like that. But that's all I've been doing. Like all this art is stuff that I've posted before, and it's modified a little bit. I'll clean it up or something, but I'm not sitting down and drawing every single day.
No.
I know this is an interview with Rob, but now you got me going.
No, this is interesting.
Actually, for this, I think it's cool. Interviews are great, but I love it when artists just chat, you know,
Mhm.
and kind of talk about stuff. So we're going to get into more about you, obviously.
Okay.
But what I realized was is that with the posting every day sort of thing, my thought process, where was I going with that? It was that you just need to okay, here's what I was going to say. You guys ready for this? You ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
We're all ready. Audience at home, if you're on your bicycle right now, are you ready?
When you look at the numbers, right, of the likes, because I'm in the same with you. I have 5 times as many followers, but I'm still getting that same sort of 1,000 to 2,000 likes,
Sure.
the same sort of reach. And what you realize is that not everybody's seeing everything, and they haven't seen everything. And so if you just post old stuff, chances are 98% of the people who follow you missed it the first time.
Yeah.
And so and the thing that I realized was Instagram is a business for Meta, right? It is one of their big businesses, and the whole thing is mining attention. And so if you go on there thinking, oh, this is just going to be fun time with friends, and I'll just post some artwork and maybe a couple people will see it, go ahead, knock yourself out.
Yep.
But if you got to sell a book, you know, if you got to treat it like if it is a part of your business, then I come at a little bit more cold, like, and say, here's a transaction. I need your attention, but I'm going to give you something worthy of your attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
And move forward that way. So
was it always owned by Meta, or was that like a purchase?
So
after?
Meta, before Meta, it was Facebook, and Facebook bought Instagram, I want to say in like 2015 or 2016, and they paid billions of dollars for it. And everybody at the time was like, wait, what? Instagram is worth that much money? It was a real head scratcher. And people were like, I didn't realize, you know, an app could be worth that much. And Facebook, now everybody looks at how much Facebook paid for Instagram and they're like, oh, they got it on sale.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was,
crazy.
Facebook essentially knew that the most valuable commodity on earth right now isn't oil. It isn't, you know, nuclear energy. It is anything but attention, people's attention.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Wow.
well, let's dig into more about you, Rob. We want, I've just been scrolling through your Instagram feed again. And
Yeah, I'm in. What year am I on right now? I'm in 2019 on your Instagram feed.
I'm gonna share.
good year.
I'm gonna share Rob's website too for people who are on YouTube. I want to first just talk about if anybody's wondering how should I. We get a lot of questions on our website or on our podcasts about like how should I present my portfolio? What I do more than just one thing. How should I do it? If you're ever looking for how you should do a website, this is how you should do a website, illustrators. And I want to ask you, Rob, we'll just kick it off with this. Like, how'd you go about coming to this version of your website? Did you build it yourself? Or is it someone you paid to do it?
It's a GoDaddy template. Simple as that.
Okay.
And I played around with it. This is kind of funny. I had years ago, I was a graphic designer for 15 years before I did illustration full time. And I always wanted to go into illustration, of course, full time. And I put together this was back when like Flash was really huge on websites. And this is maybe 20 years ago, 18 years ago. But I designed this real elaborate website. And this is when I was doing watercolor paintings for the most part. And I had a coworker of mine that did all of our web design. I designed it and he put it together. And there was no way for me to update it at all. And I had this site for a long time and it sat stagnant forever. And then at one point I took it down and I just put a placeholder and I had that sitting there forever. And I was getting into the whole social media thing with Instagram and Blogger and what's the other one? Tumblr and all that stuff, and DeviantArt. And so I just let my website sort of rot, basically. And then recently, well, my agent told me, she's like, yeah, you should have a website. And I just had that placeholder for like years. And so I put something together through, I had my website through GoDaddy. So I just went through there. I'm a huge Luddite. I'm not very good at tech. So I picked a template and played around with it. And it was kind of frustrating at first because I had a certain idea of what I wanted to do. And I just by playing around with it, but it's still not exactly, I mean, it doesn't look that great on a phone. It looks nice on a desktop, decent on a desktop. But
I don't know how many, not to interrupt, I don't know how many art directors and editors are looking on their phone or tablet versus their PCs, like if they're just sitting at their desk in New York and stuff like that, though.
Yeah, but it just looks weird.
I don't know. I'm going to fight you on that. I think what's nice about this site is, and even when I was putting together sort of all of the stuff for this conversation, I like how you break things down into cartooning, book illustrating, and character design, because those are, obviously 3 things that you love, that you want to be identified as, but also I think that those are things that other people identify you as well. And so it's nice that it's broken down like that. It's easy to navigate.
Mm-hmm. It's so well organized. And one thing that is great is, I should take a lesson from this. You don't have every single illustration you ever did on your website like I do, but you have a nice curated selection that shows pretty effectively what you do, so that an art director rolls up and they're like, okay, I get it. And they know immediately whether or not you're the guy for their particular book, the style they're going for, or if they need to move on. So it's just A+++.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is really good. We've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I think especially, because we've been following you for such a long time, and where do some of the inspirations for your characters come from? Because I think when we in the audience at home is looking at this, there's such an emphasis on shape and volume. And, I see, and we've talked about it before too, but like there's such like a Jim Henson, Muppets style to some of the characters. But like,
sure.
What else did you look at when you were a kid that kind of influenced you today? Like, where does that come from?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, you knew this before, but yeah, like the Henson stuff. That's what I grew up on. I was drawing those characters since I was 3 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have pictures of me when I was 3, I think. And I would draw the entire. I take that that computer paper that back from the 80s or
the
70s.
Dot matrix paper.
Yeah, I would put that up on the wall, and I would do like a panoramic drawing of the Sesame Street set, and that kind of stuff. But I was always drawing those characters, the Muppet Show, and then when The Dark Crystal came out, that was a huge deal for me. I saw that in the theater, and it scared me, and it also.
Oh, that movie's still scary. It's creepy. I love it, but it's creepy.
Did you see the Netflix series?
No, because I don't want to have night terrors.
I started it. Was it good though? I didn't finish it.
I didn't finish it either, but it was good. I mean, it got canceled, so that's why I don't know. I just didn't finish it.
Did you watch the Jim Henson documentary on Disney Plus?
Yeah. Oh man, that was incredible.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Looking at your style, I was trying to pin it down, and I didn't think Muppets. I actually thought like Mad Magazine meets like
Don Martin.
Yeah, like 90s political cartoons. You open the newspaper, and you've got Jeff McNelly and some of these sort of like big time political cartoonists from the 90s, and they have like these really fun proportions and whatnot. But then your subject matter is more like Mad Magazine stuff.
Sure.
So I think you put that all in the blender, and you got Robb's work.
Jack Davis is a huge influence. I actually have, I don't know if you can see behind me, I have an original Jack Davis piece up on the wall. That's like my
I hit my Jack Davis phase about 5 years ago, and then Rob told me that and just sent me photos of that. And I was like, how dare you?
I lucked out getting that. But Jack Davis, a lot of that, the Tales from the Crypt art. Well, Jack did a lot of that stuff. He's always been one of my favorite artists. And Sergio Aragones
Yeah.
is another one, huge one, big influence on me. And when I was a kid, I used to read the Gru comic book, and then all of his stuff in Mad Magazine was a big influence. And in my town, in Green Bay, I grew up here and I still live here. Our local newspaper, the political cartoonist Joe Heller, he's another influence. When I was a kid, he used to come to school events and do presentations. And right now he doesn't work for the newspaper anymore. He's freelance. He's on Instagram if you guys want to look him up. But he was another big influence on me. And I haven't seen him in a while, but from time to time I see him. But
did you mentioned you used to do watercolor. What led to the shift to, strong line work and really flat digital colors?
Good question. Well, when I was doing the watercolors, it took me forever to do. I wasn't getting the color that I wanted, the bright colors. And I would just do these layers, just layer upon layer upon layer. And I didn't paint like traditional watercolors where it was more gestures and washes and things like that. I would just do kind of tight rendering, and it got frustrating because I would screw something up, then I have to completely start over.
Oh man!
And I remember one time I did a project. It was a Christmas card for a local business, and they had wanted me to edit something in it, and I think I went in with Photoshop and I tried to change it. It just looked weird. Yeah. So after that, I thought I got to do something that's a little faster. And I always loved colorizing line art because I have a big interest in comics, even though I haven't really done much in the comic book world. I've always had a big interest in working in that style with the flat colors under bold line work. I always try to let the line art sort of carry everything. Yeah. Just also ease and just the enjoyment of the simplicity of being able to just draw in black and white and then figure the color out later. I used to work with Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes, and you guys have probably both of you guys work with those.
Yeah.
And I loved working with those, but I didn't like the cleanup and the worrying about spilling ink all over the place. And because I usually work around my house in different places in the kitchen, depending on where my family is, mostly in my studio during the day. And I started using those zebra brush pens. And for me, I've never really been very good with the regular, like what are the other popular refillable brush pens?
Like the Pentel Pocket Brush or the Kiritake brush pens,
Yeah. Never been very good with those, but I just really enjoyed working with these. They've been real forgiving. The ink dries quickly, and they get dull pretty quick. But I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at getting the most out of them as I possibly can. So,
how many of those do you have sitting on your desk right now? Because I just started working.
If you saw,
no, I wouldn't, because I understand.
It looks like somebody spilled Lincoln Logs all over my desk. There's like these. This is just on my monitor. Right now. I mean, they're all over. I buy them in bulk, so they're a lot cheaper when you buy them in bulk. But.
Because you've been using those for a long time, and I was getting kind of frustrated with my brush pens too, so I switched over to the felt tips. I've been using the Tombos for a little bit. And the thing is like you open one of those things up, and man, that tip is so perfect for like 30 minutes. Yeah. And then it just frays and flattens just enough, and you're like, oh. So right now I think I have 6 or 7, and they have varying degrees of how much I beat them up.
If you see, I put these little I put tape on the end, and I put the date, or I put like
it's 100% what I do too. Yeah.
And just so I can keep track of which ones I'm going to use just to fill in black areas, or sometimes I'll use a Sharpie for that kind of stuff. But it's so I know which one I'm reaching for when I'm working. If I have the brand new sharp point.
That's funny.
Yeah.
When you were talking earlier about your influences and thinking about like the political cartoons and the newspaper and stuff. When you were a kid, were you like the art kid in school, or did you have your art rival that was just slightly better that you fought with?
I was always the art kid. In high school, I I used to, and I don't like drawing caricatures, but I was always getting people wanting me to do caricatures, like
Yeah.
teachers and other students, and I did a lot of that. And I did um, whenever we had like any kind of print materials for the school for like musicals or athletic events, or I was always the one that was drawing all of those.
Yeah.
So like our school mascot, and um, recently a few years ago, somebody contacted me that they had a kid that went to my old high school, and they asked if they could use some one of my old drawings, and I couldn't find it. It was for their swimming program, and I said, well, I can create you a new one. So it was kind of weird going back and creating. I
Yeah.
had not done that in 30 some years, and creating this artwork that I basically did in high school for their swim team, and it was kind of weird.
What's your high school mascot?
It was a jaguar.
Jaguar.
So I used to do this back in the day. I used to do this roided out looking jaguar that for all the different sports. And
I have a feeling we would have gotten along pretty good
yeah,
back in the 90s. What was your high school mascot, Anthony?
We were the Rockets, and that was
Rockets.
a really easy one for me to draw.
oh
Okay.
nice.
But it was the flattest rocket you'd ever seen. Not three-dimensional, just as 2D as a rocket could get.
Did you guys in school? You guys were? I'm assuming both of you guys were the art guys.
Not me.
I was, but Anthony's he's really come into his own in the later years.
Yeah.
With art.
I loved, and this is about you, not me, but I loved comics all throughout my teenage years. I mean, we've all talked about it. It was that Jim Lee on X-Men 268.
Yeah.
That then and then Batman before that with like Norm Brayfogle and Jim Aparo and Mike
Yes.
Waringo on the Flash, and then the Image Boom hit in '92 or whatever. And man, like that first year of Image was the coolest, mind-blowing thing of all time.
Yep.
And then it was almost like I just instantly aged out of it. And because I was a really terrible illustrator, I was like, this is not practical. I'm never going to make money doing this. This is not what I should be doing. And I immediately dropped all of that stuff and went into business classes. And I didn't come back until I was in like my mid to late 20s.
Wow.
So yeah, but I was still into all of the nerd stuff.
Yeah.
And I would still like, go to Barnes and Noble and, peek at the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Disney art book and stuff like that. But nah.
Yeah, I miss Walden Books. I used to go in there and look at
I
all
know.
the art books.
Yeah.
Walden Books and
you mentioned-
JB, or what was it called? There was like another bookstore that was like an initials.
That was it EB Books? Look at us old men, can't remember.
I know you guys are talking about. We had one in town here, and I used to get comics there all the time. Darn.
I do love though that in the thick of Green Bay, Wisconsin, that your high school mascot was a jaguar. They're pretty prevalent there.
Yeah.
Don't get me on
Tropical-
that. That's my
tropical
soapbox
state.
on mascots. Like
Yeah, you need to have local mascots, right?
Yeah, I should have had like a raccoon or something, or
Like a brick of
a deer.
cheese.
yeah.
Dude,
We've spent a lot of time over the years talking about Star Wars, and you're prepped for this question, but like when were you, or how old were you when the first Star Wars movie came out, or like that you remember like watching it?
Well, I was 3 when the first one came out, but I saw it. My dad took me to see it. I think it was in the 79 re-release or 78 when they brought it back to theaters, because he took me to there's a theater. It still functions. It's like a budget theater, the De Pere Theater in my area, and it still looks exactly the same. And he took me, and it was a packed house. I must have been probably 4 years old, and I remember one of my earliest memories too is being at J.C. Penney, and they had a big display of all the vintage Star Wars figures. And I remember looking at them, and I remember I was holding a C-3PO figure, and my mom said, Luke Skywalker. I heard my mom say that, and I thought for the longest time C-3PO was Luke Skywalker. And I remember I saw it in the theater with my dad, and there was a guy dressed like Darth Vader that was walking down the aisles, and my dad was afraid I was going to be scared, but I was just like staring at this, and my dad told me years later it was like some high school kid in a costume, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember just blown away by that. And I remember reading in the newspaper, they had that, I don't know if you guys remember this, there was a Star Wars comic strip.
Mhm.
Wasn't it Al Williamson?
Yeah. He wasn't I don't think he was the original artist on it. He took over. I have the books actually behind me back there. I forgot who the original artist was, but I remember cutting that out of the newspaper and reading that. And it was cool to see that because it was all new adventures, and because it was only the one film out at the time. But then I saw Empire in the theater and Jedi, and just blown away by it. Empire kind of scared me a little bit with the Wampa.
Yeah.
You guys, this is a visual thing for the folks at home, but this is my. Because when you're a kid, you buy everything, all your toys, and then you have to get rid of them at some point, or they break,
Right.
or your mom gets rid of them. And then when you become an adult, you go to vintage toy shops and you pay way too much money. So I never had the Tauntaun, nor had Luke, Hoth Luke, and so this was my recent acquisition. I had a Hoth, a Hoth Trooper. And I always thought it was Luke Skywalker, and then I was sadly mistaken one day when I realized that it was just like Michael. It wasn't Luke, but forever and ever and ever, I thought it was.
I always thought that was
him.
Luke Skywalker too.
Yeah.
It's like
how is like
pilot.
Star Wars and like those kind of like adventure films, like how does that influence sort of your creativity as you've gotten older? Because there's a lot of that, like swashbuckling and that kind of stuff in your work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a huge influence. I think high school, I think it was. I remember maybe it was, I think it was high school or college, finding the Art of Star Wars books, and it had all the McQuarrie and like Joe Johnston and
Nilo
Phil Tippett and
right. Nilo Jamero, or however you say it. Nilo Rodis, the Brazilian guy.
Yes. I can't think of his name. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But their art, I had when I was like maybe right around the time Jedi came out, I bought it was like I still have it. It was like a scrapbook, and it had all of the conceptual art for Return of the Jedi.
Uh-huh.
And
I have it
all of
back
those
here.
tight pencil drawings, and I was just blown away by that. And I remember I would try to recreate those all the time. And then I remember I had a bulletin board in my room that had all of that stuff hanging up, and that was a huge influence. And later on in high school, they did those art of books, and they had all of the matte paintings, and at the time, I think I thought, oh, someday when I grow up, I want to be a matte painter, because I was just blown away by the realism and what those guys could create, like the Cloud City render and the some of that other stuff that I thought was actual sets.
Yeah, like the
growing
Death
up.
Star backdrops with like all the rows of stormtroopers.
Yes.
All painted. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's amazing.
Amazing.
And all done on glass, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know how those guys did that. It's unbelievable.
It's witchcraft is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, to make it look that real and
I mean, I'm so annoying with my kids now where I'm like, pause. We're watching a movie.
Yeah.
Pause. That's a painting. Look, that's a painting. And they're like,
Yep.
Dad.
yeah.
Was it the? I can't remember. So did you go to graphic design school, or did you? What did you do for like once you graduated high school? What did you go and do?
I went away. I went to UW Whitewater, and I majored in graphic design, and then I ended up getting a BFA, and with an emphasis in illustration and graphic design. And I was always worried about. I didn't really know what was out there as far as for careers. I knew that graphic designers, you could find lots of jobs in graphic design, and I was always worried about not getting health insurance and whatnot, and having steady pay.
Mhm.
So I always kind of took the safer route. I didn't think I was ready for freelance illustration, and even though I had been freelancing since high school, I did lots of. I was doing uh, product renders for a mail order catalog. It was a local business that started. They were doing soaps, and wasn't the most exciting stuff, but this was in high school.
Yeah.
Um, and but I was worried about finding a job after college, so I went into graphic design, and I did that for 15 years. But I always knew that I wanted to be a full-time illustrator, and I was trying to find an agent while I was a graphic designer, and I didn't have any luck doing that. I didn't aggressively pursue it, but I had a few rejection letters come in from some different agencies. Um, but I lucked out. Well, my current agent, I found her just a few years ago, really. Um, but the graphic design thing, that I did that for 15 years, and when I was doing that, I tried to combine illustration as much as possible with
Mhm.
everything I was doing. That could be from like hand rendered type text. I would try to. The nice thing with that is also one of my main clients when I was a graphic designer in the agency I worked at was Kimberly Clark. So I would design, like when we go in for photo shoots, I did a lot of those freestanding inserts you get for like Huggies diapers and
Yeah.
Kleenex and Scott toilet paper, really exciting things there. But I would do like there was always a big, large photo, and then the coupons were down at the bottom, and so I would do all the conceptual work for that, and so that was a good part of what I worked on. So that was the cool thing I got to do. Um, Before the actual photography, I would art direct the photography as well, but I got to do the actual layout and of the photography. But the cool thing, one time I went in for I think it was for Good Nights, those the for kids that kind of have bedwetting issues. Um, I did one of a kid laying in his bed or something like that. But when I designed this it was kind of wonky looking, like a kid laying in a bed. And when I went to the photo studio that we shot the photography for, they had carpenters on staff that would build the sets for these photo shoots,
Mhm.
and they built this bed to actually look like my illustration. I wasn't expecting that. I just thought they
Oh
would pull in a
wow.
bed, but they did this weird looking kind of cartoonish bed, and they said that the client said they liked the
Whoa.
fantasy element of it. I'm like, okay, that's
Hmm.
cool.
That's
But it was
neat.
kind of weird to see one of my, it wasn't intentional, but it was like seeing one of my illustrations come to life in 3D, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's
That's
wild.
yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah.
It's
So
interesting you talking about how much graphic design you've done because it's so evident in your
Mhm.
drawings. You don't
Yeah.
do simple vignette characters on a white background drawings. You do full illustration like scenes where it's a character interacting with another character, interacting with an object in a background. And every time you're doing these really subtle things that make sure the eye never gets lost, that you know exactly where you need to be looking at, whether it's through line or texture or just color or value. Like it's so impressive. And I feel like, someone might think, oh man, if only he could have gone straight into illustration instead of doing graphic design for 10 years or however long, 14 years. And uh and I feel like that you would not be the illustrator you are today if you didn't have that.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I love combining text with imagery. It's just
Hmm.
I was always, when I was a graphic designer, I loved the CSA stuff. The Charles
Yeah.
is it Charles Spencer Anderson? No, that was a huge influence too when I was a graphic designer, because all of like he would do like those different really weird offset looking illustrations combined with text, and that was another thing that was a big influence. Yeah.
I'm looking at your work here too, just going through Instagram. How do you balance working, like doing work stuff, with taking time out to do like a Mickey, fan art, or a Donald Duck fan art or something like that? What's your schedule like? How do you balance that?
Well, I work for Cryptozoic Entertainment full time, and I'm a on staff illustrator for them. I've never actually been there. They're in California. I'm up in the north. And you've
been with them for
13 years.
It's been a long time.
It's crazy.
So when you left your graphic design job, and that was the company that you moved to, right?
Yes. Yeah. I was doing when they were just starting out as a company. They hired me for some freelance work on a game called Food Fight. It was these militant looking food characters. It was fun, and it was a card game, and then they offered me a job full time to work for them, and I thought, yes, that's awesome, and I got to work from home, and so it was a no brainer. So it was hard to leave the job I'd been at. I'd been at this agency for 10 years, so it was hard to say goodbye to the people there, because it's good relationships there, but I've been working for them for 13 years now, and a lot of my job there is just working in different styles. Like right now I'm working on a bunch of Adventure Time stuff. They're doing it was the 10th anniversary of their Card Wars game that they produced, so I'm doing new materials for that. So I jump around and do different styles for them, and I'm pretty good at mimicking other styles. Like I working for them, I've worked on I did a couple different Rick and Morty games, a lot of Adventure Time stuff, and then Stephen, you guys know Stephen Rhodes. He does that really, you'd know it if you as soon as you see it, but he does that fun retro. He does everything in the style of kind of like 70s, 80s. His stuff it's that real innocent, old-fashioned style art, but it's really dark. Like
Let's call The Exorcist. Yeah. Living Well is the Best Revenge. Yeah.
Yes.
You go into any Spencer's in America, or one of those T-shirt kind of companies, and they have those. Yeah.
His stuff is awesome. But I worked on some of the games for his properties. Like we did some games based on some of the different some of his different T-shirt designs, like some card games. And
is that like the game Let's Call The Exorcist?
Yes,
like, things like that. Yeah.
And the other ones there. I think there was like 6 games. I think
Cryptozoology.
Yes, yeah, but and his stuff is super fun. And one of the things that working on his stuff really influenced me is using more of a limited color palette.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed lately. All my stuff recently has been more limited color palettes.
That's probably been 3-4 years for you, maybe 2-3 years.
Yeah, about 3 years or so.
Yeah, because that was a pretty dramatic shift. I think you've like prolific in terms of pen and ink and character and all of that sort of stuff, and doing a lot of like these incredible elaborate pinups for the comic book industry. And you're sort of like the indie darling in terms of like, if somebody has a book, it's like, let's get a Robb Mommaerts image to go with it. I was thinking about that book that John Arcudi did. The name is just escaping me, but you did an incredible
Rumble
for that. Yeah, Rumble.
Yeah, that's a fun book.
And then to see the shift in this last handful of years, not necessarily in terms of less complexity, but just in terms of like that flat, bright, oversaturated color palette. And then even just watching sort of how your book series with Claude sort of evolved, and and we can talk about that here in a second, but almost like you have to simplify things to be able to like speed things up, but there's still every little bit of Robbism into those projects basically.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go. We'll keep doing this all day. So you've been at Cryptozoic for like 13 years. You work on a bevy of different projects for them. Do you ever, and you have to work in different styles too. And if anybody goes to the Cryptozoic Entertainment website or is just unfamiliar, it is just a home for pop culture, trading cards, collectibles, games, plushies, all sorts of things. And they've also in this last like handful of years really made an incredible sort of statement using Kickstarter as a way to be able to fund initial projects, to really drive the orders, to get pre-orders out there and then run with those projects. When you have to work on all of these different properties, because you didn't mention like, working on the DC Skyfall game and stuff like that, do you ever get stuck a little bit? Like if you're going to go do a Stephen Rhodes project to an Adventure Time project to a Batman or DC thing, do you ever kind of get like artistically stuck and you don't know how to sort of pull yourself back out of that?
Well, I don't know. I didn't really work on much. The DC stuff, I didn't work on that particular game.
Oh, you did?
I think they're using actual art from that, from the comics. I think, I'm not sure. But I did work on some DC projects a while back. I did the Super Friends. They did based on the 70s series, which was cool because I grew up watching that show. That was just recreating the Alex Toth style artwork,
right?
And background cell paintings and that kind of stuff. But yeah, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
No, do you ever get stuck though? Like if you're going to do a Toth inspired versus a Stephen Rhodes, like how hard is it to come back to be Robb?
It is. Yeah, that good question. It is hard. It's weird because, well, I obviously collect a lot of reference material to render from that, and some of that stuff affects my actual personal artwork because I learned from copying those styles, like what you can get away with as far as like with Adventure Time. I mean, that stuff's fairly simplistic when you look at it. The real clean artwork, the line work, and flat colors, but when you look at it, it's really rich environments, really crazy character designs, and sometimes like you're learning that less is more. But it is hard to jump back and forth between the two styles. It is weird, like because I'll have Adventure Time artwork sitting on my desk, and then I'll put it's all real clean, like lighter line work. And I do all that by hand. I just started learning how to use a Cintiq, actually. I have one sitting right here, and it keeps crashing my machine. I should ask you guys if you guys ever run into that.
We're on Macs.
I'm on a Mac too.
That's our problem.
Oh, yeah, it keeps bombing my iMac. But going into like my stuff, I've been using a lot more heavy blacks, dark shadows, and it's kind of weird to like jump back between both of the styles. Like I'm working on the latest Mummy Man book. That's the project I've been working on the past few years, and I'm working on the second book right now. So I've been doing that at night when I put in my 8 hours with my Cryptozoic work, and then later on at night my kids are old now, so they stay up late, but in the later hours, I work on my personal stuff, which, gotcha. I don't usually get a lot of sleep, which is not healthy. And I'm almost 50 years old. So
gross.
So it's, I know. And, so like sleep is becoming more of an issue for me.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out how to do some things differently, but,
You've been doing this incredible balance for a long time. Like every year during Inktober, Drawtober, or Drawleen, whatever these things, you and I always send a message together. Like, do we have capacity to do any of this?
Yeah,
we always start strong and then we fall apart at the end. But
yep.
while you've been working at Cryptozoic a handful of years ago, I think, and you'll have to tell this story, but based on some illustrations that somebody found online, you scored an incredible middle grade chapter book series. Tell people like how that came together, and because there's a lot of really cool stuff that's pretty inspiring from that sort of story there. So yeah, how did that all come together?
The Claude
Yeah.
books? Okay.
Yeah.
From what I recall, John Marciano was and Emily Chenoweth. They were the writers for the Claude book series. And John, I think it was him that found my work online, and I think on Instagram maybe, and he presented my work to Penguin Workshop. And so they ended up contacting me and asked me and I didn't have an agent at the time, so I had done some books before, but they were all for smaller publishers. Or I did 2 books with an author that were self-published. Actually, one of them never got published, actually. Yikes.
Was that other one the Frostbite?
Yeah.
Frostbite, yeah.
That was done, on Amazon, their direct to print thing. But yeah, he had found my stuff, and then they offered me that series, and originally it was going to be 4 books, and then they added on 2 more. There's roughly 30 to 40 illustrations per book. So that was done in a kind of, and I think maybe about a 2-year, 3-year span. The last couple books I think were done during the pandemic. So yeah.
What was your deadline on one book?
I can't remember. It moved pretty quickly. And they were great to work with, Penguin. Lynn Portnoff was the art director that I worked with, and she was awesome. I mean, she kept everything moving really nicely, and super nice to work with.
And these hardcover editions are so stinking good.
Oh.
I know that there's the soft cover that are out there too, and anytime I'm in an airport and I see one of these, I always text Rob. But like these are gorgeous books, dude, and they're so solid.
I like their use of the spot varnish on the first 3 books. They stopped doing that after the 4th book, I think, maybe. But I thought that was pretty cool.
It's because the budget all went to skyrocketing paper costs.
Yeah.
It was your rate is what did it, right? Because you quadrupled your rate on
demanding.
book 4 when you became a big timer.
Yeah.
But the crazy part to me on this one is, typically you have to, like, for the audience, like you generally have to have an agent to be able to land a project like this. Like, yeah, sometimes like lightning strikes, which is clearly what happened here, and then it has led to Mummy Man, which we're going to talk about. But like the right time, right place, and Jake talked about this earlier in terms of just being a prolific illustrator who used social media and just posting and just sharing stuff and sharing little snippets of your life. And it's again, it's just pretty wild to me that you put that out into the universe, and then the universe is like, yeah, cool, let's give this guy a book series.
I lucked out. I mean, I think it was just just trying to post as much as possible, and there was a gap in between getting this book and then the Mummy Man book. I lucked out with that as well. I think Steve, the author of the Mummy Man books, I think he's the one that found my stuff and presented it to the publisher.
So you did Claude, and it was a 4-book deal, 30-40 illustrations. Now those were all line work with double tone, so blue tone.
And that I just did like a flat, like for the interior illustrations. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, and I just did all the line art was black, and then I just used the spot color underneath. Yeah. So there's no like use of gray. If you look at the Mummy Man book, it's a mix of gray and the spot color. So I thought that there was a lot you could do a lot. Seemed to do a lot more with it. There was a little bit of learning curve, learning to work like that. Like right now, I'm working on the 2nd book, and I've had a few images that I've worked on where I'm like, oh my god. Like there's a part where they're stuck inside of. The characters are, not to give away too much, but the characters are stuck inside this blob, this space blob thing, and so everything has to have like a green haze to it, and this is all done with that 2-color work. So I've been struggling trying to figure out how to color that. Yeah, it's interesting.
You almost need just more value to be able to separate certain things.
Yes.
Is this 2-color process now going to become a hallmark of your middle grade chapter book work?
I think so. I mean, I don't know what's in store for me in the future on this stuff, but
yeah.
But I really enjoy it. I love what's the old term that Jim Henson used? Simple is good, or what's it? I like the simplicity of 2-color.
Mm-hmm. Well, you remember those Darwin Cook Parker books that were just did you ever buy those when he was alive? That to me was sort of the high mark of that. And then being able to see that go back over to your middle grade work was really exciting. It's just it's a different thing or a different side of your work. When you signed on for those first 4 books, and you said you did those over the span of a couple of years, like you really had to crank on those. What was probably the one or two of the really big things that you learned working on a project like that? Because it's a lot of illustrations. You have your day job. You're a family man. You've got all this stuff going on. Like when you were working on those first handful, like what were some of the takeaways that you figured out?
Just to stay on task and create a schedule. I know you guys podcast is so invaluable to me because you guys always have little tips on these sort of things. But just creating a calendar and knowing, okay, this is what I have to work with. And like right now for this second book, I have this calendar set up, and I think there's 71 illustrations total. And so I have until a certain time to do it. So I'm trying to do at least one a day, one image a day, and there's some that there's some that are a lot more complicated than others. So I'm trying to, and this book has a car in it, and drawing cars in perspective is my Achilles.
Yeah, right. You're such a
no,
liar.
I hate. I'm terrible at it. Jake,
No,
I love your vehicles
look at your
that you
style,
draw.
and it's got a beautiful, juicy wonkiness to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you throw in a car, which you can't wonkify a car too much, or then it gets a little too cartoony, especially if it needs to be a specific kind of car. I could see where that'd be like stressful. We're like, okay, I got to dial it in here and really make sure we're drawing this car instead of the cartoony, wonky version of it.
Time to make a 3D model of that, huh?
Well, yeah, I actually have a it's a hearse, and the car in the story is a hearse, and it's kind of like a sort of a hot rod type retro looking hearse. So I have like this model of a 57 Chevy that I've been using as reference, set up on next to my desk, and just to get the right angles. And I mean,
so when Anthony says 3D model, he's talking about a computer, something in the computer.
100%.
When Rob says 3D model, he means an actual 3-dimensional in real life model.
Well, and did you glue on like all the booster jets and everything too?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh, I thought about trying to find a hearse model, but I couldn't really find any. But yeah, it's a made up car basically, but based on somewhat realistic.
I've not seen it yet, but I bet you do an incredible job. When you got these Claude books, so you didn't have an agent. You put together that deal yourself. Did you have anybody help you review that deal? I know your agent came a little bit later, but when you signed that Claude deal, did you have anybody help you? And then when you got the extra 2 books, which I assume is a new contract or maybe an extension of the current, how did all that go? Was that a really complicated process without an agent?
Not really. I wished I had her at the time, but it was fairly simple. I mean, I learned a lot during that whole process. And then working with Jessica St. John is my agent with Jill Grinberg Literary Management.
Yeah.
she kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different things.
Because in your original Claude contract, you said infinite revisions for no money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But they were
Super easy.
pretty
Sign
good to
here.
me. Penguin. I mean, as far as revisions and they were easy to work with. I mean, they weren't, difficult by any means as far as like revisions or.
Without spilling too much of the behind the scenes, did you interact more with the authors on that project, or did you interact more with the editor on that project? And how did you guys decide like what illustrations were actually going to hit? Like, did they give you an order of like these are the ones that we need, or how did you come up with all those?
Well,
Yeah.
mostly worked with the art director, Lynn, and she would, like I mentioned before, she was great to work with. I worked with the author a little bit. I actually got to meet him. He came to not long before the pandemic hit. He lives out on the East Coast, and he came to Milwaukee to do some school visits. He was going on a book tour, so he asked me if I wanted to come down and do a couple of these school visits with him. So that was pretty fun. We got to, for the day, just kind of go around to some different schools, and he's a really nice guy. But yeah, I worked with him and the other author, Emily. I think on the third book or fourth book, there was some technical things that they were both trying to envision with, I think, one of the characters, and they weren't sure how to visually communicate that from. And so we brainstormed some different ideas, and I did some sketches and threw it their way, and they looked at it and kind of gave their 2 cents on that, and then we went back to the publisher. But otherwise, mostly it was working directly with the publisher.
Yeah.
And then on the Mummy Man books, that's been working just directly, for the most part, directly with the art director, and the author Steve. Him and I just became friends through social media, and we talk on the phone once in a while, and but we haven't really discussed the book. We've been kind of going through the publisher, but him and I have been talking about just little marketing things we wanted to do for the books, and yeah, so yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Well, let's dive right into that book. So I know you wrapped up Claude, then you found your agent, and that came maybe like, was it a year later, 6 months later, when you got your agent when Claude was all done?
Yes. Trying to think. That was, yeah. Trying to think how long after that was.
Okay.
And then that's another thing I mentioned. John, the author of the Claude books, I owe him a lot. He got my foot in the door for that to work with, because that's he's with the Grinberg agency.
Nice. Okay.
So they started taking on illustrators. They were mostly just authors, I believe, and then I started working with Jessica right after that, and yeah, so, and it was sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, for the most part, before I got this book series, we were doing little smaller projects for like Scholastic Storyworks, which has been so much fun to work on that stuff. Those little flyers that are brought out to our elementary age kids.
The kind of stuff that we lost our minds over.
Oh yeah,
kids.
I love that stuff, and I have a few copies of it, and it's kind of fun to look at. But like I got a few jobs doing those, and those are always super fun to work on. They're real simple.
Yeah.
You just do one or two illustrations for those.
So then Steve found you, and then did you reach out to your agent and say this is a possibility, or was Steve already tied into HarperCollins?
He was already
this project.
He was already tied in with them,
okay.
Working with them, and then they contacted HarperCollins, contacted my agent.
That's
and
cool.
Yeah,
how good does that feel? Right?
Oh, great! I was super excited because when they initially contacted me, they said it's a monster book, so I was like, oh man, that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
and I get to do a bunch of really weird, because there's some really bizarre characters in these stories. There's one character that's a giant foot with 1,000 toes or something like that.
Oh,
Like, just weird stuff, and it has that kind of retro B film overall feel to it, and that's right up my alley. The old monster flicks and
Yeah.
B movies. And
well, let's introduce it. This new book is called The Monstrous Adventures of Mummy Man and Waffles.
yes,
What a title.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, so it's a long title. But yeah,
So
I know
well
it's
done.
perfect.
I
So tell
love
us about the character. Or no, Jake, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love the logo design for it too. Did you have any input on that?
no, I did not do that. The logo turned out really nice. I actually designed the Claude logo.
Okay.
Some of my graphic design skills kind of came into play into that.
That's cool.
But yeah, I didn't work on the logo for that. They had that all set up already. But I like the design for this book I love, because they did a lot with like, I've been using that Zipatone feel for, I don't know if you guys can see this, but
Yeah.
the Joe, the designer, he did this really cool kind of offset looking.
Yeah.
But it's super fun. Ties in with the illustrations.
So overall, like, tell us about the two characters of the book, and what kind of adventures do they get thrust into?
Well, the main character is Wen Weiler Jr., or when the little boy. His nickname is Waffles, and he is kind of like a awkward. I think he's 11 or 12 years old, and he doesn't have a lot of friends, and he ends up going to stay with his grandfather for the summer in Vermont, or in Maine, and his grandfather is a former special effects artist, retired, and he lives in this old house, and he has all of these crazy props from all the movies that he worked on. And so it's a list of like a lot of really weird movies. They actually put in the back of the book, they have a list of all of the movies that they mention in the story. And some crazy things happen with an ancient curse, and Mummy Man is actually a movie prop from one of his films that comes to life, and he's a monster in the film, but when he comes to life, he's kind of like an innocent child. He's goofy and kind, and they end up going on this adventure, trying to rescue the grandpa from one of the villains that comes to life. Count Wacula. He's like a vampire clown, so a hybrid of a clown and a vampire. So, and I'm afraid of clowns, so that works.
What else are you afraid of? So we have ammunition for later.
What am I afraid of? Oh man, lots of things. Rodents.
Yep. Same.
My daughter had a hamster. I did not care for that. Man, I'm trying to think.
I don't need to take all your secrets. I just wanted to use it as blackmail
Seafood?
down
I
the
don't know.
road.
Seafood.
What's hard about illustrating this project? So now you're on book 2. Like, what's besides the hearse that's all souped up? Like, what's hard about this one?
I don't know. Just the biggest challenge is keeping. And I know every artist deals with this issue, is keeping a consistent look to the characters. Like, and you guys probably experience this as you go along. When there's a big time gap between a project, or and you're influenced by other outside influences. When you're working on something and you design a character a certain way, and as you're drawing that character, it starts to change and morph into something different. Like, I noticed Mummy Man, when I first started. This happened with Claude too, where his design I had to go back and alter his design a little bit, because as the book went on, he started to kind of look a little bit different. and like proportion wise, and just keeping the characters consistent throughout the books. Yeah, with Mummy Man, like I noticed his facial expressions and his build and his proportions, and it's like sometimes his face has a sharper, more skull-like shape to it, and then sometimes it has a smooth, round, kind of goofier look to it. So I have to make sure that I go back and alter, make sure that those things are consistent throughout the book. That's one of my biggest struggles. Like a lot of times I will have to go back and redraw the head and slap a different head on in my Photoshop file, or make sure the colors are all consistent. And,
do you get notes on that stuff, or is that just you analyzing things?
I do, but there's certain some things though that just kind of go by unnoticed, and I look back and I go, ooh boy, it looks a little different from page 15 to page 122 there.
I just noticed that too on a book I'm working on. It's a graphic novel, and I was drawing this character came back who was at the beginning of the book, and I like had to redraw him again at this later stage in the book, and I was like, okay, what does he look like? And I realized I am not staying consistent with this guy at all.
Yeah.
Like, he's sharp where he should be soft, and he's soft where he should be sharp, and all those things. I was going to ask you this is kind of like an advice question, because we do have a lot of people who listen who are like starting out, or they're getting into it after a long time of not being into art, or they're wanting to turn this into a career or something. This is kind of a variation on, how did you get into it? But I would say today, if you all of a sudden your body of work was gone, you had no book projects that you did, no website, you just had blank sheets of paper and your pens, how would you go about building this career in 2024 moving forward? What would be your steps?
Good question.
And let's say you also have plenty of energy.
Oh man. I don't know. I would like to do like some sort of an all ages graphic novel. Just more of a simplified look, that's something I could do like a high volume, lots of, like, I've always marveled at the artists that create a huge body of work, that people that can, like, that have lots of stories, like I mentioned Sergio Aragonés,
right?
Like all of the, like, tons of, like, the super detailed, well, in his case, I don't know how he does it because his stuff's all super detailed, but like something that I could do a lot of, like multiple volumes. Like you look at like Carl Barks, well, like the Scrooge McDuck and the Donald Duck comics.
Yeah.
Like, look how much granted that was a long, vast time period that he did all that stuff, but just have something that I could be known for, that I had a lot of.
Gotcha. So it'd be like chipping away, like every year you put out a little bit more of this thing, and you always are returning to it, even while you're taking on other jobs and other work. You come back to Robb's character.
Like I feel like I bounce around too much. Like I think I have well, most artists do, but undiagnosed attention deficit, because
Gotcha.
I just got diagnosed, so yeah.
Did you? Like,
yeah, I did.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I should.
It's been helpful to find that out.
Okay, I think I do too, because I struggled in school and stayed paying attention, and but I tend to jump around and lose interest in things, and but I wish I had something that I had like a high volume amount of work for. I'm just very jealous of the people that have like Andrew McLean. You guys know his stuff. He does the Headlopper books.
Yeah.
But he has all those really cool graphic novels that all have that very consistent look.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. And I'll let Jake go here in a quick second. I was just looking at the lookouts. This was, I know this came up through Cryptozoic all those years ago, but this is, I marveled when this project came out, because
What is that?
So this was, and Rob probably will tell this better, but these were characters that Penny Arcade, which was, these these prolific webcomic makers, came up with this fantasy series called The Lookouts. And Rob was the illustrator, but then was it Mike Norton did the backgrounds or layouts on this too?
He did the inking.
The inking, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah. He, which I was a little kind of, this is where like imposter syndrome comes in. When I found out he was doing the inking on it, I thought, oh my God, like that guy is one of the most talented comic book artists that I know. And I was like, why, he's too good for the, but he did an awesome job.
Was that your first sequential comic book work?
No, I did, before that I did a short story, and one of the Image Comics did this Pop Gun anthology. They did 2 of them, and I did a short story. I wrote, it's terrible, but it's based on a story. It's based on a story from my mom's childhood. I did like a messed up science fiction horror version of it. I did a short story in that, and I did, I think that's the first, I did a 15-page story for a small publisher called Penny Farthing, like 20 years ago, for their Decoy. It was a book that Mike Kunkel, the Hero Bear creator, that he wrote, a story he wrote.
Oh wow!
And I did a 15-page story for that. So that's my only experience before that doing comics work. But I did Cryptozoic. That was one of the first projects I did with Cryptozoic when I started with them. So yeah, I was just kind of learning as I went along, and that's one of those projects I wish I could go back and redo. Because looking back at it now, I'm like, oh man, it was a really fun story and cool characters, and I wish I could go back and redraw that. I got to do some of the full, like the covers are all mine, like my inks and colors and pencils and everything. But I wish I could go back and redo some of the layouts and the character designs for that. Turned out, I was happy with how it turned out. And Mike's inks are awesome.
So here's my question then. You're not going to stop drawing, right? Even if you retire, you're still going to be drawing.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
And you're almost 50 now. I could easily, with the shape that you're in, the muscle mass that you have, I could see you easily living well into your 70s.
I hope so.
If not 80s or 90s, right? So that's another 20 plus years of drawing. Why not create that character today and start that thing now, where you chip away at it little bit by little?
That's exactly what I want to do. It's funny, but going back to the whole attention deficit, last year I created this idea for sort of like a campfire stories type comic, where it was the same character telling a story, and he shows up in every story, and it was aimed towards younger readers, like a all ages type book. And I had all these great ideas for it. And I remember we took a family trip to New York the summer before last, and on the flight I was writing in my iPhone all these ideas for stories, and I'm like, oh man, I was so proud of myself. I'm like, I'm actually coming up with ideas for stories, because I usually tank on that kind of stuff, I'm not the best writer, and I was super excited about it. And then as time went on, I started to lose interest in it, and I did some of the initial character designs for the main characters of the story, and I just was struggling with that, and I wasn't liking what I was doing. And that's the thing, it's like I come up with these ideas, but then I start to lose interest, or I think of something that I think is cooler, or And how do you guys deal with that? How do you guys stay
Well,
on task as far
I'll
as?
I'll tell you
By the
a
way,
good
Jake, I just
solution.
bought your first. It's a your first Missile Mouse comic.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't never had those ones. I have all your other stuff in your books, but um, and it was I didn't realize it, but it was I found one on Amazon. It was a library copy, so it's really beat up, and it's got all the plastic covering and the card inside of it. So it's
Well, that's how you can stay sick right there is
yeah.
uh,
Just keep licking that.
There's some
keep
pizza
looking that book.
sauce on the inside of the front cover.
Well, I was gonna say the trick there, because I feel like I've got some undiagnosed ADHD as well. Um, the trick there is you create a character that you love drawing. That's just fun to draw. That you
Sure.
would draw in your sleep, and I this is actually a lesson learned from Bill Watterson. And you put that character in whatever situation you're feeling like doing.
Sure.
And as soon as you're bored with that situation, you take them out of that and you put them in another one. So it could be horror or spooky one day, or it could be mystery another day, or it could be sci-fi, or it could be now your character, got put in a time machine and they're back in dinosaur times, or whatever. And that's a way to like stay consistent, but also feed the ADHD monster in your head.
Well, you guys were saying on a past episode about creating shorter stories. That's my thing. It's like I come up with these ideas that I think, oh, I want to make sure it can cover all these different genres and stories that make sense. But like I tend to forget that I actually have to create a story first, and that's the thing. It's like I get so easily distracted. That's great advice though on a character that's
people would
easy
claw
to draw.
over each other to get an anthology comic of yours with just all your different story ideas. I love that campfire concept because I think you can just like push it in 100 different directions if you wanted to, but an anthology from you would just be so good.
I think too, like story can be excuse me. I was just listening to a podcast about the State of the Union of superheroes. It's a off-panel comic podcast about comics.
Write that down.
And every year, they bring on a guy to talk about the state of the superhero comics industry. Yeah. And one of the things he said that was interesting was he said, right now, DC is very exciting for me, and Marvel is Yawnsville, because Marvel is sort of tied into this MCU type of thing where everything sort of has to line up and there has to be consistency, and story is like so much the focus that they just need artists to come in and bang books out so they can get through all this story stuff that they've got to do.
Yeah.
And he said it's also more long form. So you read a single issue and maybe two things happen, but they're a bigger part of an overall arc that you're reading through. And he's like, it's just annoying. He's like, whereas DC, he said, I feel like they're unencumbered by luckily none of their movies were successful and it really didn't take off. So they didn't feel like beholden to reflect that in the comics. And so they can just kind of do whatever they want. And DC's approach lately is let's get the best artists that can do the sickest art, like just the coolest stuff.
Yeah.
And let's story sort of be in service to the art instead of the art being in service to the story. And let's not worry too much about consistency. Let's have Batman do something that, let's do a Batman book that really isn't tied into all the other Batman books because, hey, this would be cool if Batman could do this, right? Instead of being like buckled in and tightened into continuity.
Sure.
And he said, it's just been so much more fun to be reading DC books right now. And so looking at you and what a phenomenal powerhouse of an artist you are, I think you're, and what I would want to read from you is come up with something that you can just go to town on drawing and have so much fun drawing, and let the story service that drawing instead of you coming up with the story first, making sure it's got proper character motivations and arcs and all that stuff. and really have it be like lean into what your strength is. I mean, a story could be as simple as my character wants a sandwich, and the entire universe is stopping this character from getting a sandwich.
Sure.
And that's fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And in the end they get, you know, maybe at the end they turn out they weren't hungry after all or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it could be as simple and as dumb as that. But if the art is just knock your socks off good, it's an enjoyable experience. And so I think, yeah, don't get too wrapped up into your own head about that stuff.
Yeah, I always talk myself out of things easily. So
I think that's good for people to hear though too. That because your art, again, I think you were like one of the top 5 inspirations in terms of like when I really started a cartoon all those years ago. Like I have looked so much at your art, and I think it's really good for people to hear though too. Like at times, despite having this incredible portfolio, is that you have self-doubt, you have fear, you have anxiety, and that it's sometimes hard to be able to deliver on the thing that your brain wants to do.
yeah,
Like that's as cruddy as that feels. I think that's really nice for an audience to be able to hear like a dude who has like now what 8 brand new or like 8 middle grade books to come out within the last handful of years still kind of doubts himself every once in a while.
Oh God, it's terrible. I struggle with that, and it's the thing is I find all these cool artists on Instagram, or you know, from you guys podcasts. I find new artists and I look at their stuff and I'm like, oh my God, why am I even doing this? It's frustrating. Self-doubt is a killer.
Yeah.
I get discouraged very easily too, which is not a good thing.
But that's the reason you do a smaller project.
Sure.
Where you're just like, hey, here's my new character. You get some positive feedback. Then you do, you know, here's my new character doing this, and you get some more positive feedback. And then like, hey, I made a 5-page like mini story with my character. And you just sort of feed off of the positive energy that comes out of that. And I think also, you know, if you're doing something that is really exciting you and coming from within you, it's that energy sort of feeds itself. Like,
sure.
Like, you know, you get to the point where for a long time, I sort of got addicted to Instagram in that I have to do a drawing and I have to post it as soon as I'm done drawing it. And I have to see what the feedback is right away. And I've sort of been weaning myself off of that over the years to where I'll even forget to post a drawing because I got everything I needed out of that drawing from just the act of creating it.
Yeah. I get like that sometimes where I'll do something like a Star Wars piece or something, and I think, oh, people are gonna love this, you know. I get cocky about it, whatever, and I post it, and it's like, you know, crickets or whatever, and I'm like, oh man, I get all discouraged, and but
is that because you're drawing scenes exclusively from The Rise of Skywalker, your favorite Star Wars film?
Yeah, my favorite. I've seen the film several times.
Rob and I have
6 copies too.
many a late night discussing vigorously our love of that film.
The love-hate of it. Did you ever see there's a YouTube channel called Chris and Jack? It's
I gotta
funny.
write that down.
These guys do skits, and Chris, I can't remember who it is, if it's Chris or Jack, but one of them was the voice of Sokka from Last Airbender series. Yeah. And so there's these 2 funny guys, and they make skit videos that over the years have become such good, high quality, where I'm just like, why don't these guys have like a Key and Peele type show? But you know, you're on YouTube, everyone's trying to get on YouTube anyway. So
yeah.
Anyways, they recently did one where one of them answers the door and it's George Lucas. One of them's pretending to be George Lucas. He's like, George Lucas, what are you doing at my door in my apartment? And he's like, hey, I just came to thank you. And the whole premise was that Lucas was working on, in the future, was working on some time travel thing. Star Wars was this huge success, but he didn't create it. Somebody else created it. So he went back in time to the 70s and made the movie. And he wanted to thank this guy because in the 90s, or no, in the coming up in the 2020s, he would be releasing his Star Wars, which would become this worldwide phenomenon. And he's like, I'd rather have that be me. Anyways, one of the jokes, I'll let you watch it, but there's some good Rise of Skywalker funniness in there.
Nonsense in there.
Yeah.
That has 500,000 views on YouTube, that particular short.
The George Lucas one?
The thing that drove me crazy about those movies was just that it was like that telephone tag type like story. It was just kind of like, it felt like there's
overall vision, right?
Yeah, it was just, they would introduce like this thing, you'd be like, oh, I can't wait till they explain this. And then like you'd wait, and then it was gone. Like how did that little lady with the big eyes,
Maz
Kanata, how did she get the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber, and how, like, just,
who knows?
I don't know. It was
we need to. I knew I could bait you into this. This is almost like debate night in America. I think we need to do like a loopholes podcast at some point where where we come up with our like least favorite loopholes in movies and then
Plot
just
holes.
argue about it for an hour.
Yeah.
Loopholes are in contracts. Plot holes are what we want to talk about. We can do
plot
loopholes.
holes. That's what it is.
There's so many. I mean, I love everything Star Wars. I mean, there's things I like. I mean, I know that The Acolyte got slammed pretty bad, and I was entertained by it. There were certain things about it I did not like, but it just seems like there's so many missed opportunities. But then there's some things that are just like, I see it and I'm just like, oh my god! You know, like my 9-year-old me my head is exploding, like in Book of Boba Fett with the him riding a Rancor, and like I was just like going nuts. You know, it's like this reminds me of the stuff I played in my sandbox. You know, the story. You know, with my figures and.
So let me ask you, while we got you here, what of the new Star Wars TV shows? I guess the streaming series is that how
you got there? You got there.
Which is your favorite out of all of them that have come out?
Well, the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian, and I loved Andor. That was I loved everything about that.
We're getting a season 2 next year, early next year.
Yeah, I think
they're filming right now.
Yeah. So, and I'm a huge fan of Rogue One. I just love that movie. I can never get tired of it. To me, that feels like one of the 3. The 3 original films. It ties in with that. I mean, I know it's got the same overall look and time period, but I just love that movie. But yeah, and I enjoyed Solo. I was a little disappointed in some of it, but
I like Solo. I mean, there are a couple of things in it, but overall, it's like why can't we get a little more Star Wars Western movies? Like, Mandalorian dips into that, but it would have been cool if we could have gotten like a second Solo movie.
Yeah, I wanted to see the whole Jabba the Hutt underworld thing tied in with him.
Let that expand a little bit.
Yeah.
Imagine if Lord and Miller, who were the original directors of that before Ron Howard took over, if they were able to fulfill their ultimate vision, considering now what like Spider-Verse has become. And Spider-Verse will go down as probably like one of the best trilogies of all time if they land this last movie, which I assume they're going to.
What's the third one's the Rise of Spider-Verse?
It's going to be the rise of something. Absolutely. All these generic titles.
Yeah.
Besides that first season of Mandalorian, which to me is like, it's just the best. I had so much fun with my boy and I didn't watch any of the Clone Wars stuff. I had an understanding and like watched a little bit of Rebels, but not a lot of it. But man, watching Ahsoka with my 14, 15-year-old and like just his brain melting at every possible thing. That was so cool, but it was so cool watching it through his eyeballs at that point. And then I was excited for it.
Did you guys watch Rebels?
Yes, I was a huge I didn't watch Clone Wars either.
Okay.
Just a few of it, and I know it has a huge following and
right.
It's put on a pedestal as far as storytelling and animation. But yeah, I was a regular Rebels
Same.
watcher, and
It's my background
Bad
shows.
Batch.
Like when I put that on my background.
Nice.
So yeah.
I feel like Ahsoka was Rebels season 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just it was such a treat for fans of Rebels.
Well, I freaked
But
out.
if you weren't a fan of Rebels, like, did anybody enjoy it? It'd be
Well, I
so
had to-
confusing.
I had to explain to my wife the whole time, because she's not a big Star Wars fan, but she watches all those shows with me, and I had to explain to her, like, okay, this character, and I think I went out and got my visual guide to the Rebels series. I'm like, okay, this is this guy, and this is this, I'm like going through it all.
Did you put your retainer back in?
Yeah.
When you did it too?
And my wife's just kind of rolling her eyes, like, oh boy. But yeah,
That's true love right there. That she'll watch those shows with you.
Yeah, she
My wife
probably
bowed
did.
out like many shows ago. She's like, you know what? I'm done. You watch these on your own.
she actually likes them. I mean, she doesn't get into the characters and everything, but she likes Grogu a lot, of course. But yeah, and I'm surprised at how she sticks with it and understands a lot of it, because I mean, yeah, like that season of Ahsoka was, you really needed to know that whole backstory. And they claimed beforehand that you didn't, but you really did. Most of it was all Rebels characters.
I think what was cool about Ahsoka too, compared to other Star Wars shows that we were getting, was it let itself be weird.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get weird and wild and bring like the exoticness of Star Wars back into Star Wars. I liked Andor because it said, let's see how realistic we can get. Let's really button this down.
Yeah.
We'll not have the Force in it. We won't have lightsabers. We're gonna have bureaucratic oversight and the sloppy mess that is. But Ahsoka just was like, let's do space whales that
really trippy stuff.
Let's do ghost troopers. Let's do like just all kinds of witches, and it was really cool and really fun. And that the bad guy who sadly passed away.
Yeah, he was
yeah.
I was heartbroken when I found out he died, because he was such a cool character.
He had the best beard on television.
Yeah,
Ray Winston.
Yeah,
Winston.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for that new Skeleton Crew show. I think my kids are going to love it, and I think I'm going to be begrudgingly sitting there, because I think the opening shot is, it literally feels like you're in a suburb on a planet.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this feels a little close to home, but give me some Jude Law.
So many people and friends were also my close friends were like complaining, like, what is up? I don't need to see a Star Wars suburb. I'm like, I've been wondering what a Star Wars suburb has looked like since I saw Return of the Jedi.
We've never seen anything like it.
Well, just like in Mandalorian when they showed the toilet on the Razor Crest, and I remember when I was a kid, kids always saying, like, when do they ever go to the bathroom in a Star Wars movie? Where are the kids in a Star Wars movie? It was always those things that you didn't really see, and they didn't explain it, or they avoided it.
They have a universal toilet now.
I don't know if you guys feel this way, but
500 different species.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but do you guys kind of miss? I mean, you're from the era that this before the prequels. There was all these things that we would talk about, in the playground or whatever, about the Star Wars films, the things that you question, like, well. I remember when I was a kid talking to this neighbor kid, and I don't know if it was mentioned in like the one of the film novelizations about who the Mandalorians were, and that Boba Fett wore the armor of a Mandalorian, and that was that thing, like your imagination, you build all this stuff up in your head, like all the off screen stories, and then when you actually see them. Sometimes you're a little bit disappointed because it's not like how it was in your imagination. I get like, I kind of miss those old days when you didn't see all of this stuff.
Right.
But
it was just, something in a comic, and or something in a book, and you just caught a hint of it.
Yeah.
For me, it was buying the action. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, my son had such a profound insight, like from his perspective on Mandalorian. He loves it too, but he's also like, he's like, the one problem is, you know, you have Batman, and Batman's this great character, and everybody loves Batman, but nobody ever wonders, like, what if there was a world of Batman, and everybody wore a different kind of cool bat suit variation, and they all had cool, you know, bat gear, and what if they had this own planet and this own society? He's like, that's not what makes Batman cool. What makes Batman cool is he's like different from everybody else. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's Boba Fett and it's the Mandalorian.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say when I was a kid, so I think all of us collected the Kenner Star Wars figures, and you'd always get like that one random alien, and you never saw him in a movie,
right.
and you're just like, this guy is so cool, and you would make up all of these stories when you were doing the sandbox stuff, and you were building these big battles in armies,
Yeah.
and then they would eventually become explained somewhere else, and you're like, "Ugh, that's not how I thought about it."
Yeah.
you know?
That's not the story I built.
Head canon's always better.
Yeah.
Well, I got a meeting I got to run to. This is this has been fun. We'll have to like have this special last half be the Star Wars, the 3-point perspective Star Wars special.
Yeah.
Like the Christmas special, like
Yeah.
we can come together every kind of few months to chew it up
Right.
about Star Wars and being old men. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but Rob, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. This is like a bucket list
really
thing
cool
for
and
me.
insightful.
I've been watching this podcast since the beginning, so this is a huge honor for me to be
Awesome.
on here.
Dude, thank you.
Big fan of you guys.
Great.
And everybody needs to go check out The Monstrous Adventures of Mummy Man and Waffles, illustrated by Rob. Thank you, dude. This is
Thanks,
incredible.
guys. Really appreciate it.
All right. That was Robb Mommaerts. Really grateful that he came on the podcast. And I'm like kind of blushing that he's been a fan of the podcast for such a long time, which is really cool. I love hearing that the people we interview are like fans of the show. So we'll wrap it up here. Is there anything you wanted to add after that?
No, absolutely not. I had just beyond checking out his artwork, his brand new middle grade chapter book. Holiday gift giving season is coming up, so I think it's a perfect time to get some mummies and some waffles. And you can pick up that book anywhere where books are sold online, physical, etc. So,
and check him out on Instagram. The way you spell it is Rob with 2 B's. He doesn't make it easy. He's not.
No, not at all.
You would think it's Robb Mommaerts, right? It's
Yep.
ROBMOMARTS, but it's not. It's ROBB. Get out your pencils and pens. ROBBMOMMAERTS. That's how it goes. He's like, I'm gonna make it as complicated as possible.
One of the questions that we didn't get to was just what is the best mispronunciation of his name? So we might have to have him on in a follow-up episode after the second book comes out. We can really get into the details of how he does stuff, and then we can ask him how bad people have said his name.
That'd be good. All right, everybody. 3-point perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts today are myself, Jake Parker, and my companion here, Anthony Wheeler. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. It's Daniel TU. Special thanks to team manager Preston Smith, keeper of the curriculum Austin Shirtliff, Shownotes wrangler Lily Howell, chief operations officer Lisa Fott, and our illustrator Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.